I think for me, the first thing I learned was that it's running the businesses. You've got lots of micro businesses within it. It's not just one business. You've got to have a handle on a marketing department. You've got to have a handle on a health and safety and compliance department. Then you've got to be thinking about admissions. Then there's a lot of time spent and energy going into the guest experience, the maintenance, the upkeep, future planning. So it really struck me that you've got micro businesses within the main business.
Welcome to the Attraction Pros podcast, where we discuss the latest trends and challenges facing the attractions industry today.
We chat with some of the top leaders in the field and provide resources that will help develop your career in this great industry.
I am Josh Liebman. I am obsessed with the guest experience and helping attractions make that their top priority for success.
And I'm Matt Heller. I am passionate about organizational effectiveness, leadership development, and employee engagement.
Now sit upright, hold on tight, and get ready for the Attraction Pros podcast. Hey, Matt, how's it going?
It's going fantastically, Josh. How are you?
Did the audio just kind of fade in and out there, or was that your voice?
I'm going to say it was my voice. It was intentional, completely.
I think it was. But I'm glad to hear that you're fantastic. Question for you.
Thank you. Yes.
What is the greatest sunset you have ever seen?
Oh, man. The first one that comes to mind was when I was in Key West. They get some pretty great sunsets down there. Can I tell you the greatest sunrise? I know where you're going with this, but
I guess so, yeah.
Okay.
They kind of look the same.
Just depending on which direction the sun is going. Or actually, right. We're going. Sun doesn't move. When I was in Ireland,
okay,
we were at this bed and breakfast, and they had this little table kind of outside the bedroom, like right near the parking lot, but you could just sit there. My friend and I had a cup of tea in the morning, and there was this farmland that was out there. So a lot of times you think about, a great sunset over the water at a beach, mountains, that kind of thing. And this was just rolling hills, farmland. And there was this one, no pun intended, silo, because I know we're going to talk about that in a minute, like a real farm silo that was out there. So it was like the only man-made structure out of all of this natural beauty, and the sun would just rise from there. Well, you know what I'm talking about. We'd enjoy a nice conversation in the morning. That was probably one of the best sunrises, but I think I got to go back to Key West for the best sunset.
Well, I accept your sunrise answer in Ireland, and I accept your Key West answer for sunset. That is absolutely $1 million sunset.
Yeah.
And did everybody clap when you see the sunset?
Yes,
yeah.
They did.
Mallory Square.
Yes, Mallory. Exactly. Although now that I'm thinking about it, I've seen some pretty great sunsets. This is going to get nerdy, behind roller coasters. I think one of the best captures that I've made on my phone as a picture was behind the Voyage at Holiday World. And the sunset behind that. So it's a great structure, great vision. Yeah.
Well, welcome to the Sunrise Sunset Pros podcast. The answer that I was going to give, and I do agree with Key West, and I do agree with anytime you see a sun rising or setting behind a roller coaster is magnificent. I was going to go with the sunset over the Atlantic in Portugal. From the Algarve coast. It's where my wife and I, we went on our honeymoon, and I remember that being absolutely spectacular. The reason why I ask the question is because our guest today gets to see some incredible sunsets from somewhere you wouldn't normally think to associate with an incredible sunset. And that is the Isle of Wight, which is off the southern coast of the UK, which our guest, Dominic Wray, says sometimes in the summer, it even feels like a tropical island, which is not something people normally associate with the United Kingdom.
Yeah.
So Dominic Wray is the parks director for Vectis Ventures, which operates Blackgang Chine on the Isle of Wight, and it is the oldest amusement park in the UK, having operated since 1843. That's older than definitely most parks in the US. Is that older than the oldest park in the US?
I believe it is. And, when you just think about history in general, most things in the UK are older than things in the US. So that it makes sense, right? It makes sense.
It checks out. Yeah.
It checks out. Yeah.
Yeah.
We've got receipts. Is that what the kids say? No, we've got the receipts.
Younger than my time.
Yeah. So one of the things I thought was really, really fascinating about Dominic in general, but also, how he talked about the attraction was the fact that it is so historic and there's so many things that, are still there from the early days, and how it's being, married with the new technology. They just talked about a new Zamperla ride that they just put in. And, when you think about where they are, and I got to see some pictures just online, it's a really beautiful setting. And he even says I have one of the best views, from my office. And I wouldn't doubt that. But just blending the old and the new, I mean, that's really old, and with the new that they have to blend. So, I would imagine it's a challenge to continue to, pay homage to the history when the history keeps getting further and further away. That 1843 date, it keeps getting older, right? So at some point, do you say, well, this has been here for, so long, do we just replace it, or do we make sure that it's still there for another 100 years or so?
And it sounds like they walk that line really well. We get to hear about their Halloween event, Terror Island, which a lot of the haunted attractions are basically woven into these historic buildings, and you feel the eeriness, not because it's built and constructed that way, but because it just naturally has that old historic, almost creepy type of feel to it if you were going into, say, like a very old building that had a lot of history. So it's
absolutely
cool to hear how they, like you said, balance that line and reference the history while also moving into the future too.
Right. Well, and speaking of how that all happens, it takes a unified team to get there. And, Dom talks about the micro businesses within the larger business of the amusement park. You've got food and beverage, you've got retail, you've got, ride operations. And yes, they are their own businesses, but they all have to work together. And Dom came from a different industry. He came from banking. And he said that was one of the things that he realized when he got into the business was that, you do have to understand marketing and food and beverage. And obviously there's people that specialize in those things. But when you're the parks director or a general manager or a park president, you've got to have a hand in all of that. And that really requires someone to have a lot of diversity of thought and ability to manage their time and manage all of their priorities to help your micromanagers, that didn't come out right, but to help them run their businesses within the business.
And that ties in nicely with one of the other things we talked about, which is about breaking down silos and how the departments communicate with one another, and that you're able to build a more cohesive product when the departments are more interconnected, and when there aren't those silos there that are separating communication between teams.
And one of the things that helps that is Dom's attitude that you should really leave the island at some point, right? Get out, see other attractions, see other businesses, take in the way other people do things. And of course, when we talked to him about what he likes to look at, we talked about trash cans. So when you think about what it takes to broaden someone's horizons, a lot of times it does take getting them to see a different horizon, getting them to see a sunset in a different place for that appreciation. And I really appreciated how he talks about internal versus external networking and how that can really expand people's mindset and then bring that back to benefit the business.
Back to the island. Yeah. And, he talks about his time learning from IAPA and taking courses at IAPA Expo. He's also very involved with BALPA, and he is on the management committee for BALPA as well. We get to hear about the British Association of Leisure Parks, Piers, and Attractions too.
Nice. So is it time to hop a boat over to the Isle of Wight and get to this conversation with Dom?
Let's do it. Hey, Dom, welcome to the Attraction Pros podcast. We're really excited to chat with you today. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. And thank you for having me. Looking forward to it.
Yeah, our pleasure. So to kick things off here, I feel like we need to connect the dots with a recent podcast interview that you did with our friend Kelly Molson on Skip the Queue. We're big fans of her podcast. She always asks everyone for their unpopular opinion. So I figured that would actually be a good place to start with our interview with you. You said that motorists ruin the road for cyclists. I think that's a perfect starting point here. And can you tell us a little bit why that's your unpopular opinion?
No, that's my unpopular opinion because I love cycling. Big fan of road cycling. Very much enjoy doing that on the island where I live, on the Isle of Wight, and in Spain a couple of times a year as well. And I do think that if everyone rode around on bikes all day, it would be much more of an enjoyable experience for the cyclists. But equally, as a road user, I do appreciate the frustrations of cyclists sometimes the other way around as well. So that's where I was coming from with that.
So I'm curious, Dom, not that this is the Cycling Pro podcast, but where I live in Western North Carolina, we have a lot of windy roads and a lot of road bikers that love to get out and challenge themselves on the hills and things like that. But they always seem to ride 3 or 4 cyclists wide. They're almost taking up the entire side of the road. So is there a reason for that? Like, is there an advantage to riding like that? Or is that just because they want to talk to each other? Like, what's the background on that?
So in the UK, you can ride 2 abreast. So you can ride one person next to you. And that is for safety reasons because it's easier for a car to overtake you rather than if you're all in one big long line. It's harder and longer for a car to overtake. 3 or 4, they might be stretching that a bit where you are, Matt. I think
Yeah.
they're talking a bit too much and not riding enough.
Yeah. It's interesting because I never thought of that. Like if there's one long line, it would be much harder for a car to pass. Okay, that's enough of cycle pros. Let's get back to attraction pros. Sorry.
So Dom, tell us a little. Well, we already know a little bit about you, but tell us more about yourself and about your career as well.
Yeah, no problem. So I'm the parks director for Vectis Ventures, and I oversee Blackgang Chine on the Isle of Wight, which is the oldest theme park in the UK. Opened in 1843. So it's been going for a number of years now. I started my career off working within a bank, actually selling houses to start off with. So I was an estate agent for a number of years, working in the property market. Then I transitioned into working for Lloyds Bank over here in the UK, in a mixture of personal banking and commercial banking as well. One day I had a client come in, her name is Paula. She's actually our HR director here, and she told me about this place called Blackgang Chine that she worked at that I'd visited many times as a child. And she always spoke about a job with a lot of enthusiasm and passion and how much fun it was. And she was telling me about all the dinosaurs and the rides she was dealing with and all these cool events. And I left that meeting thinking, oh, I'm working in a bank. This doesn't sound anywhere near as fun as this lady's job. And one day I saw the advert come up for the park manager role at Blackgang, which I applied for and was successful in that. At that point in time, I thought to myself, okay, I've sold houses, I can sell financial products, I can run a bank. Surely selling fun is just the same as selling anything else, and I must be able to do that and apply those same sorts of principles to that. I think I was a bit naive in my confidence in that, and I remember turning up on day one and someone giving me a laptop and a set of keys and saying, "Cool, here's this park. You're now responsible for all of it. Off you go." So one of the first things I did was jump on a plane to Orlando, to IAPA, and I went to one of the educational courses there on how to run a theme park and how to manage a theme park. And I came back from there with my big folder and having visited a number of attractions in the States with kind of a good idea of, okay, this is a good platform and basis of how to work from. And then I've just moved on within the company from then. So yeah, from one completely different industry into a way more fun and exciting one.
So Dom, I'm curious about that learning curve because you said you were a little bit naive, maybe coming into the industry, but I'm curious, what were some of those early lessons that you took away from your experience, either coming to Orlando or just kind of being in the thick of running the theme park?
I think for me, the first thing I learned was that it's running the businesses. you've got lots of micro businesses within it. It's not just one business. You know, you've got to have a handle on a marketing department. You've got to have a handle on a health and safety and compliance department. Then you've got to be thinking about admissions. Then there's a lot of time spent and energy going into the guest experience, the maintenance, the upkeep, future planning. So it really struck me that you've got micro businesses within the main business of F&B retail, and there's so many different strands to that, and you're really in the center of the spider's web. And I think that kind of going to IAPA and on that course, I really cemented that in my mind in terms of the main thing is making sure all of those people are working together in one and communicating, and then that's how you achieve success, really.
Mm-hmm. And then with all those micro businesses, as you took those lessons from IAPA and those courses and were able to really implement them in, when you look at all these micro businesses, how do you determine where to focus your time and energy and say, okay, there are all these things going on. We do want to make sure we operate as a team. What do I do first thing in the morning when I get here? What's the first micro business that I look at?
So every day when I come into work, I've got a plan of, okay, this is what I'm going to do. Normally that goes out the window by about 10 o'clock, which I think is the same for everyone. But we run Blackgang Chine as very much of a seasonal operation. So the site opens from March through to November. So my job almost has two halves to it. In the closed period, it's very much around the strategic planning for the following year. What new attractions are we putting in? What attractions are we going to improve? How are we going to improve systems, processes, people, looking at the future events for the park? And then once the park's up and running, it's about making sure that all of the teams are working together and that those departments are firing all cylinders when we have guests coming in. The main areas that I focus on are the commercial side of the business, so what's going to return most revenue, which is normally food and beverage and retail in terms of secondary spend, whilst also making sure I've got a keen eye on what's going on with the main product, which is obviously the park as a whole and the admissions process for all of that.
So when you think about again, those micro businesses and your priorities and the two halves of your job there, tell us a little bit about how you kind of switch hats, right? Because I think in those kind of roles, we think about switching the hats from, your operating season to your non-operating season. But within a day, you may be making decisions about marketing, food and beverage, retail, all those different things. So how do you switch your mind from one area to another? Sometimes I'm sure very quickly.
Yes, so I try to time block my day out as well. So I'll try to make sure I've got key blocks of time throughout the day with each head of department to ensure that, okay, when I'm speaking to this person for this hour, we're focusing on F&B, then I'm moving on to focus onto marketing, and then I'm moving on to focus, for example, on retail. That's the plan. Sometimes I said that doesn't go to plan. We might have something that comes in that needs to change that. But I think it is a role that requires you to be quite dynamic in your thinking and think on your feet a lot and be able to change direction quite quickly because things can come in at any moment. For example, we're planning our music events, which we're running on site next year, and we're in the process of offering on various different DJs for that. So we keep getting lots of phone calls and quick meetings to jump in, depending on what offers have come back in for that as well. So I try and have a planned, structured day, but it's also about responding to the needs and requirements of the team as well, ensuring that I'm there for them as and when they need me throughout their day as well.
I wonder if we can pull back a little bit. You gave a brief overview of Blackgang Chine and talked about how it's the most the oldest park in the UK. Can you actually just tell us more for those who might be unfamiliar? What's the experience like? Can you kind of give us a virtual walkthrough of the park?
Yeah, no problem. So as we said, it's the oldest theme park in the UK. Blackgang's unique selling point is its coastal position. So the park is situated on top of a cliff top on the Isle of Wight. And we have the most beautiful outlook across the Solent and towards the back of the island as well. And we get fantastic sunsets from here. And it's really a landscape that's unlike any other I've come across with a theme park. So we are dubbed as the land of imagination, as we have lots of various walkthrough experiences and areas of the park which are heavily themed. So for example, we have one area called Cowboy Town which you can go into, and there's a shop called General Stores where you can buy your armory and your ammunition, you can pan for gold, We have live action cowboy shows there. What really sets that apart from any other cowboy town is it's set underneath the backdrop of the cliff. So when people walk into it, they're like, oh wow, this is like a movie set. And then you sort of say, no, this actually is the cliff. It's the real landscape of the area. So what's very unique about the park is we've made use of that landscape to try to enhance it, to give people a really immersive experience. So we have various different areas. We've got an area called Area 5 where we have large-scale animatronic dinosaurs, but that involves you taking a walk down the cliffside underneath the dinosaurs. They're coming at you from lots of different angles. We have lots of different plantations on the island because of the climate here. So that's very unique in terms of the plants that we're able to have here. All of our rides with their positioning, we've got a drop tower that's positioned above the dinosaur area. But when you go up to the drop tower, you can see the drop all the way down to the cliff underneath you as well. So it's quite a dramatic experience. This year, we put in a brand new gyro swing from Zamperla, which does a 120 or 360 rotation. And when you get very close to the top, it does feel like you're going to fly out over onto the beach underneath you as well. So it's a very quirky park with lots of different areas. We've got dodos, dinosaurs, fairies, pirates, cowboys. It's all sort of a melting pot of crazy ideas that have come together over the years. But it's really that location that sets it apart. I do think I've got one of the best office views in the world, I would say.
And can you explain the name Blackgang Chine?
Yeah, so Blackgang is a village on the Isle of Wight. And a chine is a naturally formed ravine, so to speak, that water will cut through a cliff edge and form. So it was a village called Blackgang, and there used to be a chine here which went all the way down to the beach. And historically, the park had lighting and lanterns that would have led you down to the beach. That's because the park, when it started in 1843, was started after a whale washed up on the beach. And Mr. DeBow, who was the original owner of the park, took that whale, stripped all the flesh and skin off of it, and exhibited the whale skeleton as a sort of macabre tourist attraction back in Victorian times. And many people hadn't seen something of that scale before. And we still actually have that original whale skeleton in the park for people to come and visit today. But that's how the park started, and that's where it's got its name from.
So I feel like you not only just gave us an overview of the park and what it's all about, but I feel like you just took us on a trip through time as well.
Yes.
How do you preserve that history that the park has, and being the most historic park in the UK, 1843, while at the same time you said you just installed a Zamperla ride. So looking at that, and also looking into the future as well, making sure that that it always stays current, it always stays fresh, it always stays relevant, but while at the same time really acknowledging and referencing the history of the park too.
So there's some areas of the park which we have kept the same. So for example, we've got some of the original fiberglass dinosaurs which came into the park actually via helicopter and were on national news back in the 80s when that happened. And we've upgraded those to animatronic dinosaurs. So what we do is take a lot of the classic areas and pieces of the park and put a modern twist on them. For example, in Pirate Cove, we've got two big wooden pirate galleon ships that people can squirt water at each other across the ships. And we're in the process of looking at installing a swinging pirate galleon boat ride into the park to put a bit more of an immersive and modern experience on it. So we always carefully have a nod back to that heritage and the original idea or concept within the park, but try and take that and put a modern twist on it for a different generational audience.
So can we switch gears just a little bit and talk about life on the Isle of Wight? Because I think it's probably a place that if people have heard of, they may not have been to. Small island, just south of, mainland England, if I'm correct. And I think you grew up there, correct? As a boy. So can you tell us about life on the island and how it might differ from other parts of the world or even other parts of the UK?
Yeah, for sure. So the main thing is you have to get a boat to get on and off of it. So I've grown up very much used to getting on a boat to travel. There's various ways of getting on and off, different scales of boats. We've got hovercrafts that come backwards and forwards to the island as well. It does present its unique challenges when we're looking at bringing goods and services across to the island as well. But it is incredibly connected. you can get on the boat and be in central London within an hour and 20 minutes. So it's not as far away as people think that it is. And the island is varying degrees of beautiful coastline. There's its own microclimate. It's almost like being abroad in some places. We have an area of the island called Ventnor that's sort of very much of a French town. It's got that kind of vibe. It's got palm trees there. So in the summer months, it can feel like, well, you are on a tropical island, which I don't think you can get anywhere else in the UK, really.
Connecting that with everything that you do and being the parks director and overseeing Blackgang Chine, having grown up there, being a native to Isle of Wight, is there some part of you that feels like when you see guests visiting the park that you're welcoming them to almost like your home? Like do you take more ownership over that? I'm just thinking, I grew up in Detroit, Michigan, and I moved to Orlando and I worked at Disney World, right? I was in an area that I hadn't previously lived in before. But for you, it's right there. It's almost like it's your neighborhood, it's your backyard. What type of feeling does that bring out?
Yeah. I mean, certainly if there's anything in the park that people don't like or hear about it when I go and get my hair cut or go to the garage to get my car fixed. But we have a lot of generational visitors to the island. So a lot of people come to Blackgang. They will bring their grandchildren to relive experiences that they've had as well previously. So there's lots of areas within the park that people will come back and take photo reference points with their family to create reoccurring memories. We have a little toadstool in one of the areas of the site that has the date on it. And every year people will bring their family and sit the kids on the toadstool and take a picture with the date on it and then come back each year after that. But it's an amazing experience to welcome guests into the park. And it does feel like an extension of your home, and you have a bit more of a personal connection with those people that are coming in. And we certainly have a large season pass holder database, which are predominantly people that live on the island, that are local people. So you do get to see guests' children grow up, and they'll start off on the smaller teacup rides, and then you can see them go up through onto the bigger rides as well. So it's quite a personal experience, I would say.
You mentioned the season passes. One of the things I was curious about is maybe that mix of locals, right, that are coming there every single year to take the picture of their family versus people that are coming in maybe from other parts of the UK or even other parts of the world. Because like you said, you have to take a boat to get there. It's not as easy maybe to get to as some other places. So I'm just curious about that mix. Is it mostly locals, or do you have also the international visitors?
Yeah, so predominantly 80% of our trade comes from tourism coming across to the island. So our trading pattern is almost like a very steep mountain. We're incredibly busy from June through to the beginning of September. Then we slow down again, and then we're very busy again in October half term. And then the rest of the year when we're open, that's predominantly local people that are coming to visit us. But the main majority of our customer base are tourists coming across to visit the island on holiday.
You talked about being on the island. It can be sometimes challenging to get goods and services. What about staff and employing and staffing Blackgang Chine? What type of staffing challenges do you encounter, and particularly how do you manage those and help to overcome them?
Yeah, so our that staffing profile really changed after COVID. Prior to COVID, it was a bit more of a challenge, I would say, to source quality upper management and middle management team members. And then when we saw COVID happening, we had a lot of people that moved across to the island for a change in lifestyle, moving out of the city. And we found that actually really helped upskill our business. For example, we have a lady that works for us called Laura, who's head of our marketing team. She's worked for visitor attractions across the UK. Moved across to the island for a quieter pace of life, but she hasn't really found that with working for us. She's going at 100 miles an hour again. So we've really been able to improve our senior leadership team post-COVID. In terms of our seasonal staff base, we rely predominantly on locals for that. Some departments are more challenging to hire for than others. We find that retail, admissions, ride operations are very popular departments, but food and beverage can sometimes be a bit more challenging to staff and resource. But I think that's a reoccurring trend across other attractions that I speak to, and isn't isolated to us really.
Well, yeah, I was just going to say, you speak to the operators over here in the States and they say the exact same thing, you know, in a lot of cases. So, one of the things I'm curious about is from the staff perspective, you know, you talked about the history and you talked about, you know, also the vision for the future. Is it important for you to make sure that the staff has some semblance of what that history is to share that with the guest, or is that kind of icing on the cake in terms of the experience? Like, where do you put that importance of the history in terms of the team members that are serving the guests every day?
So when new team members join the team, as part of their induction is that we take them through the history of the park. We will take them on a walk through the park as well. And that walk is both from an operational viewpoint, but equally we explain to them around, okay, this area here is this. It was previously this. Guests may have remembered it and visited at this point in time, and that's what happened there. I think that's important for the all of our staff to understand the heritage and the history of the park, because that is what a lot of the customers come in and want to have a talk about and enjoy, and that enriches the experience for them. So we make sure that's a core part of their onboarding process as well.
Can you talk a little bit about the culture and about the team and being able to develop the staff and just a little bit about kind of what the work environment is like?
Yeah, sure. So we're very much one team as a whole. When I joined the business, I was quite keen to break down any walls or silo working that I maybe encountered when I first joined. And we've worked really hard to get everyone working together and understanding that something that might be affecting, food and beverage can have a domino impact through to the rest of the business as well. So now everyone very much works together in a very collaborative manner. Obviously, sometimes we have various different disagreements, and people from different departments have different viewpoints on things, but I think that's quite healthy to be able to challenge each other in a professional and respectful manner. But we very much have a culture of everyone pulls together and works together towards a common goal, especially when we have events on that, you know, involve a melting pot of departments coming together. And it's really great to see how passionate the team are about delivering that great guest experience as well.
I'd love to peel back the onion a little bit on that, as Josh and I like to say quite a bit. Because when you talk about, you know, even coming into an organization and, you know, making sure that there aren't those silos and people are working collaboratively together, I still don't think I said it right, but there's a lot of personalities involved. So I'm curious about some of your strategies and things that you had to do in order to get to the point where you could be more collaborative and people weren't working in silos because that's just what they felt comfortable doing, or I didn't like that other person, or whatever that means. So if you could, you know, maybe
Yeah, sure.
expand on that a little bit.
So one of the things that we do as a business every 2-3 years is we run what's called an insights workshop. So that involves the senior leadership team and management team filling in a survey, which basically dictates and explains to us a bit more about their personality types. And that will then put them into 4 different color spectrums: red, green, blue, and yellow. And we will then sit down as a team and discuss the different personality traits that each of the team members have, and basically talk through how we like to be communicated to, and also how we like to receive feedback, how we like to receive criticism, what are the best communication cues to use with certain types of people. And having gone through that experience multiple times, it's really enabled the team to understand more about each other and really get a better understanding of, okay, if I'm going to go and speak to James about this, I understand that maybe I need to ask him how his family is, how his weekend was, and discuss other elements of his life before I get to the point of what I've come to speak to him about. And other people just want you to get to the point and they don't really like small talk. So that's one of the methods that we've employed to do that. Equally, we've taken the team on various team bonding exercises over the years as well, which has really helped them understand a little bit more about what makes them tick, what motivates each of them, how each of them are driven, and what's really important to them as people. I think helps you then break down those walls and understand a bit more about your colleagues and how they all work together as well.
What are some of the tangible business outcomes that have come from that you can trace back directly to doing this exercise?
I would say we've had better overall staff productivity. in terms of we've been able to lower our overall labour costs because now the various departments are keener to work together and understand the impact that if somebody from F&B needs support from retail or admissions, the retail and admissions managers keen to go and send that help and support rather than us bringing in additional labour costs because they understand why that manager may be asking for that. So it's improved communication amongst the team, which is overall help the profitability of the business as well.
I love to hear that. That's what I work with a lot of organizations on is communication. And it seems like just about every issue that people have in organizations comes back to communication. So I love to hear that you're doing these insights workshops. Can you talk a little bit more about how it has impacted communication? I know you talked about kind of styles, but in the moment, like as people are interacting with one another and collaborating, what do you see almost from an outsider's view? Like if you're watching the team, how do you see them interacting with one another?
I think it's really helped when we have group meetings. It's very much improved that communication around the room at points before where there may have been disagreement or conflict around that. You can sort of see people taking a second thinking, okay, that person's viewing it from that viewpoint because of this. And that then has reduced the sort of the differences of opinions around things. They're still there, but it's more of an understanding of why someone may have that difference. I also think as well it improves conflict resolution within the team as well because they have a better understanding of why someone may feel that way around a particular subject and have a better understanding of how to address that with them if there is that difficult conversation to have. We found that the team are much more prepared and have the tools to go and have those conversations with each other rather than it getting escalated up to management for them to have to step in and have that conversation. They're just better equipped to communicate directly with each other.
So, Dom, one of the things that Matt and I like to talk about a lot is the intersection of the guest and employee experience and how the two very much go hand in hand. Everything that you're talking about, creating a more productive workplace that then reduces labor costs and enhances productivity and enhances communication between team members. How does that then translate to the guest experience?
Well, I would like to think that the team have a more of an enjoyable experience working here, which I think is very important because that is the key thing to then translate across to the guests. The people that are coming into the park, they're on holiday, the majority of them, or they're wanting to have an enjoyable afternoon with their family. It's a fun environment and fun space for them to come into. We want that to be conveyed across to the guests from the staff. So if the staff are relaxed, they feel happy, they feel like they're well equipped with all the tools to do their job successfully. I do believe that translates across nicely into the guest experience as well. And then ultimately we want the staff to have fun with the guests, interact with them, and for them to have the most memorable experience when they come to the park as well. And I think that does help trickle down into the customer experience at the end of it, really.
Yeah. So, Dom, you've mentioned IAAPA already, that you've attended that, but you're also involved in what some people may not know about, which is sort of the British version of that, which is BALPA. So can you talk to us a little bit about your involvement with them?
Yeah, sure. So BALPA is the British Association of Leisure, Parks, Piers and Attractions. And I absolutely love the organisation. I think it's absolutely fantastic. It's a real melting pot of different scales and sizes of visitor attractions, theme parks, farm parks, suppliers. It's just a brilliant melting pot of all those individuals and companies coming together. I sit on the management committee board there. We have members of our team such as James, who sits on the health and safety committee board, and Laura, who sits on the marketing committee there as well. And it's just a fantastic organisation to be able to not only build relationships within your local area, but also within the wider industry as well. And I really found that BALPA as an organisation has really helped with the development and confidence of the staff within the team as well. And it's just a fantastic place to network and gain understanding around how anything can work within the industry. It's a very open and honest organisation as well. We've worked collaboratively with lots of different parks. It's opened up and built lots of relationships. We've got great relationships with the guys over at Poulton's Park and Gary, who works there. He's been fantastic with helping us with some of our operational questions, from someone that works in a larger organization. It's just a really transparent organization. I think it's a fantastic part to be of.
Dom, I'm curious as far as the collaboration across the industry and different facility types and different types of attractions between places that are more amusement driven, like Blackgang Chine, and places that are more maybe cultural vision, driven, whether it's historic homes or gardens or historic sites and art museums and things like that. Is there a lot of collaboration between the two, or sometimes I hear that that those on the cultural side, they don't want to be considered themselves as an attraction because then that associates more with the amusement, whereas a lot of the same challenges are almost identical. So I'm curious as far as how the relationships and the dynamic work there.
Yeah, I think sometimes there is that perception from within the industry, but you hit the nail on the head there. Everyone has the same challenges. They're just at different scales of economy, in different formats. Most people have got ticketing, booking systems, emissions challenges, maintenance challenges. So I think there's a lot we can all learn from each other. They're just in different styles, really.
So one of the things that you mentioned early on is when you got into this role and you went over to IAPA, you visited some attractions. I'm curious, what inspires you? Like when you go to an attraction, what are you looking for? What are you looking at? And how does that affect you or inspire you when you come back to Blackgang?
So I just love seeing how everyone does everything differently, but also exactly the same as well. And I love going to other parks, and when I go with my son, we stood in the queue line, and I'll be talking to him about how they're loading guests onto the ride, or actually, oh, that's fantastic how that ride operator engaged with them, or if there's an issue with a height limit, how do they handle that? And I'll bring that back to the team and say, hey guys, I went to visit this site, saw this. I think this is a really great way of doing it. Or, it can be anything from that all the way through to, watching someone go around the site and collect litter and the piece of equipment that they're using to do that. And I'll be like, okay, that's great. I'll take a photo of that and, take that back to James, who looks after our site and services, and say, we've got to get one of these mobile wheelie bins. I've seen this guy using it. It's fantastic. It's brilliant. All the way through to, theming ideas, the way food is served in particular restaurants, the booking experience on the website. I'm a real sort of geek of trying to absorb all that information and take the best bits of anywhere I go and see how we can scale that up or down to translate to our business as well.
I just love how many people we have had on the show that say, when I visit other places, I take pictures of their trash cans and the way that they pick trash, and I bring that. I've got to imagine we're one of the few podcasts out there where we hear that a lot, and that's great to hear how people are learning from each other. So thank you so much for sharing that. How does that then translate to the rest of your team? I've seen you were quoted recently saying it's important for your staff to leave the island, see other attractions, and attend training courses. So what does that look like of being able to take all that and spread that out to your team?
So I think BALP is instrumental in that, in terms of the team's involvement and being able to go to the various conferences that they run, go to the various training days and the experiences that are run by them, and also the other organizations that are associated with BALPA as well. And I think that really helps broaden the team's understanding, because I think it's okay me coming back saying, great guys, I've seen this, we should really start doing it like this. But if they are able to actually go and experience that firsthand themselves, they're then able to, experience that emotion of being loaded onto a ride and having a really great experience with that operator. So then it brings to life the things and the examples that I'm trying to give them. And equally, I think it's great for them to be stars within their own right. I'm really proud of the members of the team that have got onto the various subcommittees within BALPA as well. And I think it's fantastic for them they're the experts in those fields, and they should, be shining examples of that particular area of the business that they work in. And I think that helps develop their confidence, and also then enables them to look at new practices within their own areas of speciality within the organization as well. So big advocate of them going out and experiencing other things. I think that's the best way of people learning, really.
Mm. Well, Dom, throughout this conversation, you've really given us a lot of insight into kind of how your mind works and, what you focus on. I'm curious if you have any advice or thoughts for upcoming leaders, even maybe even people coming in from other industries coming into the attractions industry?
I would say just talk to as many people as possible, and attend as many expos and events. Go and have that conversation with that person that you sort of look up to, or think's more senior, or wow, I wonder how they got that job working for that company. Because people are always willing to help each other. It's got to be the most friendly, welcoming industry that I've ever worked in, and it really does feel like, even though people are working at different attractions of different scales, everyone will have a conversation with everyone, and they're always willing to help somebody else that works in the industry, and signpost them along the way. I would just say get yourself involved in as many organizations, whether that's Balpai, Apo, wherever you are in the world, and I think networking within that is really valuable, and that just opens up more and more doors and opportunities for you.
Yeah.
Completely agree that this is absolutely one of the most welcoming industries, that everyone's out here to help. And like you said, talk to as many people as possible, ask those questions, reach out. For someone who might not feel 100% confident in doing that yet, because maybe they haven't seen how amazing and friendly and welcoming that other person might be who wants to help them. Maybe this is kind of getting like a little more granular here, but kind of taking that step into networking can be very intimidating for some people. And I'm curious perhaps how you've overcome that, or what advice you would have in that regard.
Yeah, I mean, I'm always one to go up and say hello to anyone, so that's always been my strategy. But I think there's lots of tools that you can use to kind of take steps along the way to that. I think LinkedIn's a fantastic tool for that. I think it's a great way of connecting with people and opening up conversations in a softer manner versus walking across the room and just introducing yourself to someone. And I think if you're going to attend an event or an expo, and you can go on LinkedIn and see the various other people that are attending, drop someone a message, say, hi, I'm going to be attending this as well. It'd be great to grab a coffee, have a chat when we're there. And then that kind of softly opens the door for you to go up and have that conversation with whoever you want to have a chat to, if you feel like that's a bit of a better route of going down for you. Or go with a colleague, or if you've got a connection within the space that you're going to visit already, you can quite often use those people to help open those doors for you or introduce you to other people as well. So that would be my strategy for that.
Awesome. Kind of along that similar line, you talked about team members that are, kind of coming up through the organization. Would you have kind of similar thoughts for them, even if they're within the organization, to kind of network within their teams and within, again, people next to them, so they're not creating those silos, in addition to kind of going out and getting off the island?
Yeah, completely agree. I think that both internal networking and external networking is fantastic for people's personal development. I think, if they're able to connect with people within the industry and similar businesses as having similar challenges, it enables them to feel less isolated around particular problems that they might have. There's probably somebody else somewhere that's having the same issue with loading onto a ride that you're having. It's at a similar sort of level, that might be needing to solve a similar sort of problem for their boss. So I think it's really positive for them to do that. And I actually think that going out into other organizations and networking with other organizations enables your team to be happier within the organization that they're working in, because you give them that freedom to experience that and then bring those ideas back. I think it's more dangerous to stop people visiting other attractions and going and seeing other people and networking, because that's when they then feel, I'm a bit stuck here. Why can't I go out and grow personally myself as well? So yeah, big advocate for doing that, definitely.
Excellent. So Don, we have a few minutes left here, but there's one thing here that we'd also love to ask you about, and that's about Terror Island. And I wonder if you can tell us about that, because Vectis also operates Terror Island too.
Yeah. So Terror Island is a Halloween experience that we run at Blackgang Chine in October, which we've proudly won quite a few national awards for. We have 4 scare mazes that we operate here. And our real unique selling point on that is that the mazes are within very old buildings. Obviously, having been here for a number of years, we've got quite a few old buildings. And that's really what makes them very unique. One of them is housed in an old water mill that is incredibly old, that goes across 2 floors. So when you go downstairs into the water mill to meet the pig man that resides down there, you do have that real sort of foreboding sense of a child of, oh, there's a noise downstairs and I'm going to go down and investigate it, knowing full well that you probably shouldn't be doing that. And that's really something that we've developed over a number of years to extend our demographic for the park. It's very different from what we offer normally. You have to be over 16 to come and visit that particular attraction. And we segment that off into an area of the park that's not used throughout the rest of the year. And that's gone down very well with our customers, but it's something completely different from the normal sort of family-friendly offering. And then we use the customer base we have there and leverage them into events that we run during the summer called Sunset Sessions, which are clifftop parties that we have here with various DJs that we bring in. And again, that extends our demographic outside of the normal family market and kind of gives the parents a good opportunity to party while they leave the kids at home as well.
So I do have one more question about an attraction that I read about on the website. Is there something called the Mouth of Hell?
Yes, there is, yeah.
Can you tell us about that? That sounds unique.
Yeah. So the in essence, the Mouth of Hell is a large fiberglass dome, which looks like it's coming out of the ground as if it is the entrance into hell, which has spiky teeth in it. And you can actually crawl into it. There is a very small hole at the front of the mouth that you can crawl through, which every year someone will end up getting stuck in because they remember being able to get through it as a small child, which you can, but maybe not as a 40-year-old man can you fit through it anymore. But that's a very popular classic attraction because you can go inside and climb in the eyes, and it's something that people remember that's been in the park for 30, 40 years as well. So yeah, quite a quirky piece of history within the park, yeah.
That sounds awesome. So Dom, as we start to wind this down here, if people want to learn more about Vectis Ventures and Blackgang Chine and they want to get a hold of you directly, where would you send them?
Yeah, so they can go to blackgangchine.com or my email address is dominic.ray@vectisventures.co.uk, and you can find me on LinkedIn as well under Dominic Wray.
Excellent. Well, Dom, this has been a wonderful conversation. It's been great to learn about you and certainly Blackgang Chine and all the things that we've been educated about today. So thank you so much for your time. And for everybody out there who's watching and listening, just remember, we are all attraction pros. Thanks for listening to the Attraction Pros podcast.
Make sure to subscribe so you can tune in when new episodes release. And even better, please leave us a review on iTunes.
For more information, visit attractionpros.com.